There goes Hardtack. He's a fine old engine. There goes Hardtack. He's a fine old engine. Smoothly, smoothly down the track, so full of vim and verve. Up the hill and down the hill and round the great big curve. There goes Hardtack. He's a fine old engine. There goes Hardtack. He's a fine old engine.
Everyone who knows anything about the railroad knows that Hardtack is a fine old engine. Each day, Hardtack makes a trip. One day he goes from Lake George to Bellows Falls, and on the very next day, he goes from Bellows Falls to Lake George. And as he rides smoothly down the track, choo-choo-choo-choo-choo-choo-choo-choo, toot-toot, toot-toot, everyone looks and says, "There goes Hardtack. He's a fine old engine." Early each morning, even before the sun comes up, the engineer walks to the roundhouse. Hardtack is already there, puffing and smoking and eager to go. The engineer always taps the wheels. Clank, 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 sound the wheels sharp and clear. The engineer always climbs into the engine cab and pulls the whistle cord. Toot, 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 tootles the whistle, husky and strong. Then the engineer turns on the headlight. Flash goes the light, bright and shiny, and you can see way down the tracks. Then slowly, slowly, the engineer opens the throttle and choo, 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 choo. Hardtack pulls the train into the station. Standing at the station, the long train is beautiful to see. First comes Hardtack, because he is the engine. Behind the engine is the coal car. Next, the passenger car, where the passengers sit all day. Next, the dining car, where people sit at tables and waiters bring food to eat. Next, after the dining car, is the mail car, where letters travel and are sorted by mailmen. And the last car is the baggage car, where the baggage man stacks and stores the passengers' trunks. And that's the way the train looks, standing at the station, very early in the morning before the passengers arrive. Suddenly, the passengers begin to crowd on the platform, and they rush on board with their newspapers and suitcases and fuss in their seats, and they say, "Excuse me," to each other, and take off their coats and fuss in their seats and fuss and carry on.
Excuse me, please, but I'm in such a rush, oh.
Of course, but do you have to crush so?
Why, there's an empty seat right here. Gosh, someone else just sat in it. Oh, will I never find a place to sit?
Excuse me, please, I'd like to put my bag in place.
Of course. Look out, it's in my face.
Now everyone is settled down and comfy in his seat. Now why are they all getting up? They're going in to eat.
Then all the hungry passengers get up and turn around and walk back to the next car, the dining car. And I guess I'll go along too. I'd like some breakfast.
Waiters' coats are starched and white. The tables look so pretty. The dining car is big and bright while rushing through the city.
It's fun to breakfast on the train, sitting at a table, while everyone is as polite as everyone is able.
I put my napkin in my lap and order what I like most. Orange juice and scrambled eggs and milk and buttered toast. The waiter pours and fills my glass to the very top. The engine pulls so smoothly that he doesn't even spill a drop.
Well, after enjoying that lovely breakfast, let's go to the next car, the mail car. When you or your mommy or daddy mail a letter to a far-off place, it usually goes by train in the mail car.
Letters, 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 letters. Thousands and millions of letters are sorted in bags, one bag for each town. The mailmen work quickly as they walk up and down. They throw them and toss them, the letters go flip right into the right bag with never a slip. And to help all the mailmen get on with their work, old Hardtack pulls smoothly with never a jerk. The bag marked Milwaukee is getting all fat, but Winnipesaukee not fat as all that. Skinny, scanny Atlas is starting to fill. Half full Hannibal goes into a spill. The bag for your city contains quite a few. Maybe one of the letters is coming to you. Coming to you, coming to you.
Let's go through the mail car and into the next car, the baggage car.
Neatly, neatly stacked up tall stand trunks and barrels and cases.
And one on another against the wall, the cartons are firm in their places.
The baggage man sits at his desk near the light, leaning back in his chair, with a puff on his pipe and a smile that is bright, and a train that runs smoothly makes everything right. The baggage man hasn't a care.
Oh no, the baggage man hasn't a care.
Neatly, neatly stacked up tall stand trunks and barrels and cases, and one on another against the wall, the cartons are firm in their places.
And that's the end of the train.
There goes Hardtack, he's a fine old engine. There goes Hardtack, he's a fine old engine. Smoothly, smoothly down the track, so full of vim and verve. Up the hill and down the hill and round the great big curve. There goes Hardtack, he's a fine old engine.
And that's the way it goes, day in and day out, when old Hardtack pulls the train from Lake George to Bellows Falls, and from Bellows Falls to Lake George. And as he rides smoothly down the track, choot, 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 toot, 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 everyone looks and says, "There goes Hardtack. He's a fine old engine." One day, very early in the morning, before the sun came up, it began to rain. It rained harder and harder. It got colder and colder, and the wind blew something fierce. When the engineer arrived at the roundhouse, Hardtack just stood there, smoking and puffing and shivering on the track. The engineer tapped the wheels. The wheels did not sound clank, 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 sharp and clear. Instead, they bonged clunk, 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 flat and quiet. The engineer climbed into the engine cab and pulled the whistle cord. The whistle did not tootle, toot, 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 husky and strong. Instead, it bleated, toot, 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 hoarse and weak. Then the engineer turned on the headlight. It did not flash bright and shiny so you could see way down the tracks. Instead, it blinked pale and dingy, and you could hardly see anything at all. Then slowly, slowly, the engineer opened the throttle, but Hardtack did not puff, choot, 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 choot. Instead, he sneezed, choo-choo-choo-choo, choo-choo-choo-choo, as he pulled the train into the station. Suddenly, in the rain and in the cold and in the wind, the passengers began to crowd on the platform and fold their wet umbrellas and shake the water from their wet raincoats and newspapers and suitcases. They fussed in their seats and grumbled and mumbled and took off their wet coats and fussed and grumbled and only sometimes said, "Excuse me."
Excuse me, miss, oh my, what's this? My umbrella tip is dripping.
You splashed my hat, and worse than that, my raincoat sleeve is ripping.
I'm cold and wet down to my shoes. This howling wind just makes me cry. Oh, will I never be all warm and dry? Oh, look, the rattling shook my rubbers from the luggage rack.
I must complain, this awful train is rocking on the track. Now everyone is settled down and grumpy in his seat. I hope that they'll perk up when they get something warm to eat.
All the hungry passengers got up and turned around to walk back to the dining car. But the train was bumpy and jerky and swayed in the wind. There was something wrong with old Hardtack. Instead of puffing choo-choo-choo-choo-choo-choo-choo-choo, Hardtack was sneezing, choo-choo-choo-choo, choo-choo-choo-choo-choo-choo-choo. And that's why the train was bumpy and jerky. The passengers all rocked back and forth and bumped into each other and grumbled. And finally, they got to the dining car, and I did too.
I grab my chair and sit down hard. The table seems unsteady.
The passengers begin to fret, 'cause breakfast isn't ready.
The waiters all rock to and fro. The silverware is jiggly. The coffee cups jump up and down because the floor is wiggly.
It's no fun to try to eat with everything so bumpy. My toast is cold, my milk is spilled, my scrambled eggs are lumpy.
Will Hardtack never settle down so breakfast can be gay? Don't say never, do be clever. Try again another day.
Outside it was raining harder and harder and getting colder and colder, and the wind was blowing something fierce. When we finished eating whatever we could, we staggered back to the mail car. Choo-choo-choo-choo-choo-choo-choo. Choo-choo-choo-choo-choo-choo-choo, sneezed Hardtack as we stumbled into the mail car. Did you think the dining car was a mess? Did you? Well, wait till you hear about the mail car.
Mailmen work on a smooth train, the work moves right along. Mailmen work on a bumpy train, everything goes wrong.
Toss a letter out of bag, it begins to flutter, sails into the dining car, lands right in the butter.
Mailmen work on a smooth train, the work moves right along. Mailmen work on a bumpy train, everything goes wrong. Package marked Chicago bound, train starts to bump and bucket. It goes up Chicago bound, comes down in Pawtucket. Mailmen work on a smooth train, the work moves right along. Mailmen work on a bumpy train, everything goes wrong.
Mailbag in the corner's full, bag is tagged for Dover. Train goes bump, the bag goes dump, do the whole job over.
Mailmen work on a smooth train, the work moves right along. Mailmen work on a bumpy train, everything goes wrong. Toss a letter out of bag, it begins to flutter, lands into the dining car, lands right in
A bowl of oatmeal, as a most unsteady waiter was trying to serve it to very fancy and fussy Mrs. Archibald Bainbridge Cartwright the Third, who was so astounded to find a letter in her oatmeal that all she could say was,
Indeed.
Mailmen work on a smooth train, the work moves right along. Mailmen work on a bumpy train, and everything goes wrong.
We finally made our way through the mail car to the baggage car to say hello to the carefree baggage man.
Messy and noisy all over the place, the trunks and barrels are rumbling. The cases and cartons are in disgrace as the stuff that was in them goes tumbling.
There were hats, bats, cotton spinners, cans, pans, TV dinners, sewing machines, soup tureens, lawn mowers, corn hoers, snippers and dippers and flippers and clippers, and that isn't all, there is more. There were bars, jars, corn husk choppers, wheels, reels, dried food hoppers, milkshake mixes, stocking fixes, alphabet blocks, pendulum clocks, wallets and fluters and skillets and scooters rolling around on the floor.
The baggage man tries to tie things tight. His fingers run through his hair.
With a puff on his pipe and a frown that's a fright, and a train that's so bumpy that nothing is right, the baggage man's loaded with care.
Oh, yes,
The baggage man's loaded with care. Messy and noisy all over the place, the trunks and barrels are rumbling. The cases and cartons are in disgrace as the stuff that was in them goes tumbling.
Late that night, shoot, 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 shoot. Hardtack finally pulled into the station. The sleepy passengers put on their raincoats and hats and rubbers and stepped out of the train with their heads bent against the wind and went home. The baggage man and the mailmen and the waiters said good night and hurried to their warm homes. The engineer drove Hardtack into the roundhouse and oiled the wheels and oiled the whistle and polished the headlight and left a little fire burning in the firebox to keep Hardtack snug and warm through the cold, rainy night. Then he put on his raincoat, his hat, and his rubbers. He bent his head against the wind and walked home. Next morning, before the sun came up, the engineer walked to the roundhouse. Hardtack was there, puffing and smoking and eager to go. The rain had stopped, and it was going to be a beautiful day. The engineer tapped the wheels. The wheels did not bong clunk, 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 flat and quiet. Instead, they sounded clank, 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 sharp and clear. The engineer climbed into the engine cab and pulled the whistle cord. The whistle did not bleat toot, 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 hoarse and weak. Instead, the whistle tootled toot, 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 husky and strong. Then the engineer turned on the headlight. The headlight did not blink pale and dingy so you could hardly see anything at all. Instead, it flashed bright and shiny so that you could see way down the track. Then slowly, slowly, the engineer opened the throttle. Hardtack did not sneeze, choo 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 choo, choo 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 choo. Instead, he puffed a cheery choo 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 choo, choo 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 choo, as he pulled the train into the station. That day was a beautiful, sunshiny day, and as Hardtack rode smoothly down the tracks, choo 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 choo, toot 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 toot, everyone looked and said, "There goes Hardtack. He's a fine old engine."
There goes Hardtack. He's a fine old engine. There goes Hardtack. He's a fine old engine. Smoothly, smoothly down the track, so full of vim and verve. Up the hill and down the hill and round the great big curve. There goes Hardtack. He's a fine old engine. There goes Hardtack. He's a fine old engine. There goes Hardtack. He's a fine old engine.